Hi, my name is Maud. I work with the ACT team, and today I want to talk to you about editing Wikipedia. More precisely, I want to give you advice and talk about some strategies about how to get critical and cultural studies into Wikipedia. So about the context of the project, which this video is part of. So about a year and a half ago, we started a project called ACTipedia, and the idea was to get the type of research that we do, which is mostly critical and cultural studies, and also work on aging and communication and technologies, to get this research into Wikipedia, because we noticed that aging in Wikipedia was mostly represented through a biomedical lens or an economics perspective. So this video is about strategies to change the dominant discourses that circulate in Wikipedia. So if you want to get a given topic, in our case this was aging, into Wikipedia, your first task is to produce an inventory of what's already there. So when we started, we looked at the English language Wikipedia and also at the French language Wikipedia, and we had a list of keywords that we put in the search engine of Wikipedia just to find out what has been written about aging, what was already there. So identifying this, we were able to identify where to intervene. This means which entries we could modify and what were the bigger gaps. So where we had to create entirely new entries. If you work in more than one language, the important thing to remember is that different languages don't talk to each other very easily on Wikipedia. So it's if you don't want to miss anything, it's better to do the research in one language and then in the other. Okay, before you start creating new entries, it's very important that you get familiar with the criteria and you practice your editing skills. This is important because when we try to create new entries, for example, when these entries were contested, the people, for example, who tried to have an entry deleted, they relied a lot on the guidelines, the rules, and the policies to discredit our entries or our changes. So that's why it's important that you are familiar with the criteria before you start editing, especially if you want to edit some content that might be controversial. Here, this is the articles for the deletion. This is one example of a problem we encountered when we tried to write an entry on a research center for women, aging, and media. In our research, it was when what we could call minority subjects, like women, LGBT, or cultural communities, it was when they were the main topic of an article that they got deleted, or that people tried to have them deleted or erased. It didn't work every time, but there was always at least some debate about this. Two important things to note here is that these topics are often seen de facto as being not neutral. And neutrality is one of the rules of Wikipedia. The interpretation that they make of neutrality is often biased. As soon as you will, for example, defend an idea that is not the majority or that is not a dominant idea that is widely accepted, it often gets interpreted as not neutral, or as having a problem of tone, or as promoting the subject. And the other thing is notability, which means if your topic is notable outside of small group interests, and this is related to the number and the quality of references that you can find on your topic. But the problem with this is that if one topic, for example, is popular or highly visible in the media, it will have like many third-party sources that will have produced like articles about it or videos or something like that. Whereas if your topic is more about less popular subject, like a minority subject, or defending a minority point of view on some topic, yeah, it will get less attention, and it will be harder to defend the notability of your subject. So these are other examples of the problems that some our entries that ran into some problems because of these two criteria. For example, here with LGBT aging, the Wikipedians that reviewed it said that it had problems of tone, which we tried to work on, but it didn't really have a problem of tone, so it was hard to change it in a way that they would find acceptable. But so this entry was about research conducted on the topic. So it was just like a report based on many research articles on the topic. And even then, even if the entry was backed up by so much like academic research, it was still kind of rejected at the beginning for problems of tone. And then the other example is that of RECA, Respecting Elders, which had also problems of tone, but this time it was because they thought we were working for the organization and just trying to get free publicity or something like that. They said peacock terms that promote the subject, but we had it revised, like the text, and that was like not true. So we had to, in all these cases, we had to argue on the talk pages to get the entries to finally be accepted. RECA was deemed not notable enough, also because it didn't have a lot of coverage in what they consider good sources, which can be academic articles, but also the media. So it's a relatively small organization, and it's not like necessarily a very popular topic. So that may be why they don't get that much coverage. But they still had some coverage in the like local newspapers or newspapers for seniors. But even then, it's like these sources were not mainstream enough. So if you want to find out more about the biases that creep into Wikipedia, here I give you two references. The first one is more about gender, and the other one will also talk about gender, but also the white and the Western bias, or like points of view that are dominant in the English language Wikipedia. We think it's important to add that it's not only who edits Wikipedia that may have an impact on the content that gets accepted or not. Because one of the first things you learn when you start digging this topic is that it's mostly males and mostly young people, I mean like under 30 years old, who edit Wikipedia and who are involved in the development of the policies and guidelines. So that's one thing, but the other thing is how to evaluate the sources in context. What can be considered a good source, how to assess the research, and the importance of critical thinking. For example, the fact that they don't seem aware of how Wikipedia with its policies about sources and notability, participates in a culture of popularity, which has the effects of reproducing the discourses that are already dominant instead of making space for more and different voices. Now about editing the entries. So the easiest way to start intervening in the discourses that are about your topic in Wikipedia is the easiest way is to start by editing entries that were created by someone else, so entries that are already accepted into Wikispace. For example, you can add a new section, which is what we did with the section about criticism of the term in the successful aging entry. So this went really well. We were able to talk about critical perspectives on this notion. So these are other examples. We did the same thing for media and gender. We added something about aging women in the media. So for example, our topic is aging, but we can contribute to entries that are about something else but related. For example, this one was just about media and gender. So we added something about aging women. And the third example is agisme, which means ageism, and we added something about digital ageism. So another important thing is to not forget to create links to the entries that you create, because this way your entries will not stay isolated and more people will come into contact. So this is pretty easy to do. So I put two arrows here. For example, there's always a section at the end of articles and it's called See Also or Voir aussi. For example, with this one, we added an entry we created about culture du vieillissement. So you will find this in almost every entry. And you can also create links inside the text. It's the one at the bottom right of the screen. It says Group Activist. You see the font is not black but kind of violet. That's what happens when there's a link. So someone who would read this entry could click on this. For example, this entry is not necessarily written from a critical or a cultural studies point of view, but we created a link there so someone could click on that and it would bring them to another page that we created that is about aging and activism. There are two things that we tried that did not work out as good as we expected. The first one is the draft tool, which is also called the sandbox. So Wikipedia will suggest you to use this when you are a new editor. So if you just created an account, so you will see like boxes that will like suggest that you use a tutorial or a sandbox or something like that as a first step towards editing, towards creating a new article. But in our experience, it was not super useful because it had the effect of like we received a lot of advice, but advice that was not very helpful because it just repeated the same things about tone, neutrality, notability. That when they gave us advice, it was just, oh, there's a tone problem, but there was no, like many times we asked for details, for more specifics. Where do you see the tone problem? Like what words should we change? And people were unable to answer our questions. So most of the time we ended up publishing the article anyway without the approval from the like coaches that will like comment your articles if you use the sandbox and you submit it for a review. The second thing is the wiki projects tool, which can be a good thing, especially if you work on a topic that is broad. For example, we did something. We did a wiki project about aging and culture. So that would include everything that is not like about medicine or about. So we had a long list of entries that people could work on. Someone who would want to help could just find information there. So it's a good tool for collaboration if you don't work physically in the same space as other people who want to work on your team. But for us, it had also the negative effect of like drawing attention of some people who disagreed with the project. They questioned our project, and it was not as useful as we expected it to be. That's something you might want to look into, but it's better to just really think, is this really going to be useful before you do. So, and the last thing I want to talk about today is the custodial aspect of our work. One thing that's really important is that you keep watch over the changes that you make and the entries that you create, because new entries, as I said earlier, new entries can get deleted, and usually this is done within 1 week. Also, the changes can get reverted, undone. To see if changes were made, you'll see when you're on your page, for example, the page aging, at the top right corner, there's the View History tab. So you just click on that and you will see who did what and when. And you can click on something like for the previous version to see the difference between the versions. This is a really useful tool because you don't have to reread the whole entry every time.